Many students struggle to read and engage with traditional texts and stories. Tyler DeWitt, a middle school science teacher, provides one compelling example of learning material that is relevant and meaningful for students, and not necessarily by the book.
The main characters in the story are bacteria and viruses. Now, the story that I start telling my kids, it starts out like a horror story. Once upon a time, there's this happy little bacterium. Don't get too attached to it. The language in their textbook was truly incomprehensible. If we want to summarize that story that I told you earlier, we could start by saying something like these viruses make copies of themselves by slipping their DNA into a bacterium. The way this showed up in the textbook, it looked like this. That's great. Perfect for 13-year-olds.
Technology in the 21st century makes it easier than ever before for students to collaborate and share narratives that remix and transform original stories into new works of art. Tyler DeWitt's story was inspiring, but can you imagine how inspired his class could be to develop their own stories that support the core learning material? It's important for students to experiment with many different forms of storytelling and expression, from oral stories to poetry, and transmedia is just one practical way to engage students. Just as it's important for students to view examples of transmedia stories, it's also important they have opportunities to create their own. Let's take Miss Brown, who's noticed that her students seem checked out during English class. She decides to take a familiar story, Little Red Riding Hood, and have her students turn it into a transmedia storytelling experience, or a fractured fairy tale. Students get creative with the reinterpretation of this famous fairy tale, creating narratives for Red Riding Hood, the woodcutter's son, and even a famous movie producer who was looking at the story from a different angle. Students construct separate stories that enrich the overall narrative that made the original story so special. By involving students in making transmedia narratives, Miss Brown sees her students' engagement and motivation to learn rise in a transformational way. In another case, Mr. Klein teaches supply chain management, and in the past couple of years has seen students hand in weak solutions that seem out of touch with the real world of business. This is in part because the assessments provided to students were neither authentic nor challenging as compared to real-world problems that are nuanced and complex. This year, he tries something different. He wants to give students real-world problems and leverage the power of social media to connect with industry experts. Students apply storytelling and marketing techniques to create a multiple-entry story world for others to understand and appreciate their solutions, challenging students to move beyond a paper-based learning they have come to expect proved to be difficult, but also showed students new avenues to present their work and engage in narratives they wouldn't have been privy to without metaphorically stepping outside of the classroom. In participatory culture theory, Jenkins writes that the creation of a new text from an existing one is a way for students to read creatively by responding through a new piece of text rather than a critical essay. Remixing material to serve new purposes and engage with the audience is an aspect of transmedia that makes it appealing for learners. Transmedia storytelling provides diverse options, from students navigating the story world of a virtual or augmented reality-based game to creating their own product and presenting aspects of it on specific mediums that serve their purposes. With the opportunities brought about by media convergence and new opportunities for expression, students require the skills to develop their own media competencies and multiliteracies. Transmedia storytelling is an opportunity for students to gain practical experience that builds on old and new forms of literacy. It can also facilitate leadership experience, negotiation, teamwork, communication skills, brainstorming and problem-solving skills, competitiveness, technological proficiency, and many other aspects key to our participatory culture. Cope and Calantis state that literacy teaching is not about skills and competence. It is aimed at creating a kind of person, an active designer of meaning with a sensibility open to differences, change, and innovation. Transmedia storytelling is a powerful way for students to create and mobilize knowledge and develop core skills ideal for future employment and active citizenship.